Good morning and welcome to The Journey. I really appreciate all of you who are here taking the time to come and join us today. And if you are with us for the first time, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and taking a chance to be here and meet new people and see what this is all about. We really hope that you enjoy it, and we'd love to have you back. We also want you to know that wherever you're at in your spiritual journey, it doesn't matter what you believe, whatever your lifestyle is like, whatever, you guys are welcome here, and we mean that from the bottom of our hearts. So, I have a question for you. Have you ever been out late at night and then up really early the next day, and your eyes are bloodshot, your hair is all nappy, your shirt is wrinkled, you're walking stiff because you're getting old, and someone tells you, "Wow, you look like a zombie today." Has anybody ever had that happen to you? Maybe just a few of us, a couple of us, okay, or maybe you've even felt that way at times, okay? You felt like, you find yourself staring blankly at people who walk by, you get tongue-tied when you talk, you drool at inappropriate times. I didn't know you guys were going up today. Okay, you can go upstairs. Yeah. Sometimes stuff like that happens, Anyway, but, sometimes you unwittingly snarl or you gurgle or groan without even noticing it, and maybe you feel like a zombie. Well, this morning we begin a new series called Jesus and the Zombie Slayers, okay? Almost sounds like a new music band, right? You got Huey Lewis and the News from back in the day, Bob Marley and the Wailers, and Jesus and the Zombie Slayers, right? Okay, anyway, I don't know what it is about them, but people are fascinated with zombies today. Have you ever noticed that? Anybody here? Yeah? People are fascinated with zombies. They become something of a cultural phenomenon. At least there's definitely a strong zombie-loving subculture in our society today. There's something about the living dead that has captured the fascination, the attention, the imagination, and even the fear of a lot of people. It's not totally new either. In fact, zombies started gaining a small measure of popularity way back as early as the late 19th century. And then not long after motion pictures were invented and developed, zombie flicks started becoming a hit, especially in 1968 with the first Night of the Living Dead in black and white. And that could be shown as a cartoon today. I mean, my goodness. But since then, we've seen all sorts of books and movies and comics and B-rated films and blockbusters and video games and toys and music about zombies just flood our culture over time. I remember sitting in a movie theater with my father-in-law a few years ago watching I Am Legend. Have you guys ever seen I Am Legend? And oh my goodness, with Will Smith, the movie is loaded with these freaky zombie-like people screaming and killing and eating people. It's like, why don't they ever eat each other? I mean, it's just, be done with it. And, it freaked me out. I didn't know what the movie was about until we got there. And so there I am, I wanted to leave the theater so bad. I can't even tell you. There I am, a grown man sitting with Wendy's dad, and I wanted to cry. I mean, it was just terrible. Then, of course, there's the Brad Pitt movie coming out this summer called World War Z. It's about a big zombie apocalypse. Speaking of which, here's the current zombie apocalypse right here. I have to tell you, one time I was driving two teenage friends home recently, and I won't mention the names or else I owe somebody $10. But anyway, one of them sat in the front seat of my truck, and the other sat in the back. And as I was driving, it was abnormally quiet. So I looked over, and neither of them were speaking because they were both texting each other in my car. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with you? God's given you a voice, right? Well, we're just having fun, and I'm like, okay, whatever. But anyway, so back to the other kinds of zombies. Here's what I find interesting. There's a growing number of people, including some scientists, who actually believe that people can be turned into zombies. The zombies may not be a completely reanimated corpse, but people are studying the effects of certain brain parasites and neurotoxins, drugs, and viruses and so forth that can send people into a zombie-like and even cannibalistic-like state. Kind of creepy, right? But there was in fact, there was even a zombie apocalypse warning put out by the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, last year. And they have since retracted the idea, but that's how tuned in to zombies our culture has become. And so you might be wondering, well, what do zombies have to do with Jesus? Are zombies in the Bible? Was Jesus a zombie? And before we get into that, I want to describe a typical zombie and his or her behavior. So zombies are typically known as reanimated corpses, dead, rotting, maggot-infested bodies that begin functioning again. Okay, they're the living dead, neither dead nor alive, but reanimated. And according to whatever book you read or movie you watch or whatever it might be, they can be reanimated either through voodoo or some kind of other dark supernatural power, or through some bacteria or virus that infects the brains and controls the body. And typically zombies exist to eat fresh flesh, right? Brains are their favorite, but they'll settle for a bicep or a leg or, ripping out your intestines or something or your face. Then, when a person gets bitten by a zombie and after dying, that person then gets reanimated into a, half-eaten zombie himself, and the cycle continues. You can see how attractive it is, right? Okay, so but zombies are gross. They stink. They're unpleasant to look at. They kill. They destroy. They seek to rage and ravage everyone in their path. They're evil. They don't care. They're scary. They're out for one thing. And the thing that they're out for is to satisfy their own appetites as they prey on the lives of other people. They're almost unstoppable. They never give up. You can whack off an arm. You can cut off a foot. You can, lop off their leg, and they will still attack. They'll still come after you. They won't stop. They want to overtake you and consume your brains, right? And so, now I believe that zombies really do exist today. The living dead are thriving. And those monsters that I'm talking about are alive inside of each one of us, okay? Just think about it. Within each one of us is a dead, smelly, rotting corpse that moves around the corridors of our hearts. It's mindless and vicious. It will do anything it can to satisfy its hunger for flesh and its desire to have control of our lives. All your life, all my life, throughout recorded history, we human beings have been plagued with a weakness for wickedness, a desire for decadence, right? A powerful gravitational pull toward moral compromise and evil. It's throughout history. Have you ever asked yourself, what influences a person to lie? Or why am I so infected with anger and envy and hate and lust? Why am I haunted with such insecurity and fear and distrust and suspicion? Why is it so easy to be bad? You ever ask yourself those questions? I mean, goodness, why is it so easy to hurt other people? Why is it so easy to cheer for the Seahawks? I mean, things like that. It's just wow. I'm getting hate looks. Keep your inner zombies inside. Okay, so, but still, this disease, this zombie virus affects everyone, regardless of age, race, religion, gender, lifestyle, income level, degree of education. It doesn't matter. It affects everyone. Just look at our world today. Why is it so difficult to do the right thing? Why is it so hard to pass a simple law to protect the unborn? Why is it so difficult to stop drug trafficking or to keep pornography out of the reach of kids? Why is there so much physical and sexual abuse today? Why is there a growing resistance against God and the things that he stands for? I mean, look at all those things, and you've got to ask yourself why, and got to answer those things. If you're a Christian here today, Have you ever wondered why it's so difficult to concentrate on God for even just a few minutes at a time without our minds wandering off, to jump into something else that's far less important and doesn't even compare in value and beauty and or satisfaction? Ever wonder that? Or why does prayer seem so unnatural? Yet we can connect so easily with movies and video games. We can snuggle up with sinful thoughts for hours on end and overload our week with busyness while we ignore reading maybe the Bible. Or, oh my goodness, memorize a scripture? That's a foreign concept. Might as well learn Greek, or something. The truth is that there's a zombie inside that we are not only allowing to live, but we're actively feeding. We're handing brains and brains, and here's more of my, right? And more of our brains. The zombie is consuming our minds. And it's highly trained in the art of sin. It's obsessed with self, and it's anti-good, and it's anti-God as well. It blames God. It fights with God with all its might. The zombie within so needs to die. It really does. So where did this zombie and all this evil come from? How did it take up residence inside? Is it a product of our environment? Is it a product of our upbringing? Is it a product of bad sushi? Which I don't think there's bad sushi. I really like sushi. But where did this zombie come from? And the title of the talk today is Zombie Origins. And in order to find the answer, we're going to look all the way back to the book of beginnings, also known as the book of Genesis. And I truly believe that Christianity, I believe this, Christianity, out of all other religions and belief systems in the world, I believe provides us with the best explanation and most accurate explanation of the realities of life, physically, spiritually, philosophically, historically. It ties everything together so well. And if you're a spiritually curious person here today, I'm glad that you're here. And I invite you to listen in, to explore, see if it makes sense. There's a green handout or a green sheet in your handout that you are welcome to use to take notes on if you'd like. But just don't zombie off away and go to sleep, okay? So anyway, let's look at bright beginnings. According to the writer of the ancient book of Genesis, humanity had a bright beginning with a bright future. Have you ever had a new car or a new house? Anybody ever bought a new car or a new house? Maybe about half of us in here, okay? It's clean. It's untainted. There's no scratches, no damage. And the smell. Oh, man, the new car smell makes it almost worth it to buy a new car. Not quite, but almost, okay? And I know the new car smell is, I think, like decaying chemicals or something, right? But anyway, in the beginning, everything was new. Everything was pure and in order, functioning properly. And it smelled really good without the chemicals, okay? God had created the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, the animals, the vegetation, the physical laws, our ability to see, vision and sound was all created. And it was described as good, pleasant, full, enjoyable, wonderful. It was good. And as good as everything was, God saved the best for last. And here's what it says in Genesis chapter 1, on the screen. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them. And a little ways down, another verse or two later, it says, "And God saw that it was very good." Okay, it was a very good thing that he did. And so the first blank in there, you can fill out. Humankind was created in God's image. And that was a good thing. I am so glad that God didn't create us in the image of a cow or a bat or a cockroach, okay? Imagine dating and trying to find an attractive cockroach. I mean, what would you look for? Anyway, but God created, the first man and the first woman in his own amazing image. He placed them into a perfect environment called Eden. It was a paradise of unimaginable beauty. I truly believe that nothing on our planet today even comes close to comparing with the environment that they were in at that time. Colors were in their original magnificence. Temperature was perfect. The ground was probably soft, so you could walk around barefoot and naked, right? You know, you couldn't catch cold, you wouldn't get a sunburn, and you wouldn't prick the bottom of your sissy feet while you're walking on the ground, right? Okay, I know that would be me. So, but there were no thorns, no smog, no parasites, probably no mosquitoes or spiders, okay, at all. I'm like, yes. And who wouldn't want to live in a place like that? No taxes either. That's really good. Okay, it was a perfectly unspoiled environment. In addition to that, Adam and Eve enjoyed unbroken, uninterrupted relationship with God, their creator. They understood what it was to be loved perfectly. They understood what it was to be able to love God back as well. There was no pain, no conflict, no insecurity, no fear, no politicians to screw things up, okay? I mean, it was a wonderful place. Being created in God's image meant that they were given intellect, emotion, the capacity to love, to exercise morality, to enjoy a relationship, to know intimacy, and have the ability to choose. In addition, they were given the charge to rule, okay? To exercise authority, the authority that God himself had, and he had given it to them to subdue, to govern, to lead, to care for this environment, this planet, everything on it. He had given them charge to do, just as he would do with the universe. Something else about the first of our kind, which is the next point. Humankind was created innocent. Okay? No inner zombies. They were free from the experiential knowledge of sin. They had no desire to do anything bad. No magnetic pull to anything less than good. You know, can any of us imagine anything like that? I don't know that we can. Complete innocence. Caitlin, my oldest daughter, I might owe her $10 now. I mentioned her name. She's now taking driver's ed. And last week we were talking a little bit about what she was learning, safety and so forth. And we were talking about, driving with both hands on the wheel and all of that. And she goes, yeah, I'm learning a lot. And Dad, as I was reading, I thought, well, Dad doesn't do that. And Dad doesn't do that. He doesn't do that either. Oh, Dad doesn't do that either, And I'll tell you, I am so far removed from innocence that I can't even drive right. I can't even, or whatever the word is, or, good or whatever. But Adam and Eve were created innocent with the intention of forever living in that state, completely full, completely free. But then something happened, and nobody knows how long Adam and Eve had lived in the garden before the train wreck happened, and they could have been there for 10 days, 10 years, 1,000 years, who knows how long they were there before this happened. And I've got a little video clip that I want to show that I really wish it happened this way. A lot of you have seen this before, but it's worth watching again. And so are we ready to roll that one? I really wish it happened like this.
Nah, I'm good.
Things might be a little bit different. But hey, I love that commercial. But Genesis chapter 3 describes a strange yet terrifying event that affects us still today. And we'll read through part of that. It'll be on the screen. You can follow along. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God really say that you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" Now, first of all, I've got to say, if I were Eve, and if I were approached by a talking snake, I'd have grabbed a shovel and beat that thing to death, okay? It talks, right? It's possessed. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it was like Narnia and all the animals talked. I don't know. But anyway, so, some people believe in zombies. I believe that, Satan did speak through the snake back then. But the first thing that Satan did was twist God's words, okay? Because God never said you can't eat from any of the trees in the garden. He said you can eat from any, just not this one. Okay, so the first thing that the serpent did was he twisted God's words, okay, trying to cause confusion and doubt. And so here we go. The woman said to the serpent, we may eat from the fruit, from the trees in the garden, eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die. You will surely not die, the serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. And there it is, the lie, spoken quickly and confidently as if it were truth. That was the first lie that Eve had ever heard. And so when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. Why does it seem like so many sins are connected with food? I don't know. By the way, there is no evidence that, Food Fest today after, woo, here we go. But there's no evidence that it was actually an apple. In fact, it could have been a chocolate-covered strawberry. That's pleasing to the eye and sinful at the same time. But anyway, so here we go. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized that they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. And then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. So all joking aside, this was the worst moment in the history of humankind. And notice how the enemy of our souls works. First, he planted a seed of doubt into Eve's innocent mind by twisting some of God's words, making God sound like anything other than good. Did he really say that you can't eat from any tree, these trees? And so Eve thinks about it and then clarifies what God actually did say. So score one for Eve. There we go. Way to go. Then the serpent just goes for broke. He immediately and confidently and convincingly speaks a lie. And is spoken with such conviction that the original seed of doubt began to take hold. You're not going to die. Come on. And from there, he went to cause Eve to doubt God's goodness, to doubt his motives, to doubt his character and his love. And he does the same with us today. The only thing that's going to happen is that, you'll be more like God. You'll experience a higher plane of consciousness. I'm like, ooh, yeah, right? You'll know things that God isn't telling you. He's holding out on you. He's keeping something from you. You can do better. Come on. And between the serpent's convincing tone and the believability of the lie, the doubt in her heart and the chocolate-covered strawberry on the tree, staring at her in the face, she bit, hook, line, and sinker. And then she decides to bring her husband in on her sin. After all, when you do something wrong, you don't want to do it alone, right? You want backup, okay? So that's what she did. And so Adam, who was standing right there the whole time, instead of protecting his wife and lopping off the serpent's head, he jumps right in for the bite. And then unexpected happened, something that the couple hadn't bargained for or believed. And as they were licking their lips, the virus kicked in. So enter the virus, and their choice permanently ruined human nature, okay? They gained knowledge, all right, but it wasn't the kind of knowledge that they wanted or were prepared for. You see, it wasn't that they just ate bad fruit, okay? The fruit wasn't the issue. They invited a lie into their untainted souls. They embraced an untruth about their loving Creator. Their outward actions revealed a distrust in God and a greater trust in the serpent and in themselves. Their action was a rejection of God, and when that happened, they died inside. Or at least the process started. And as soon as that happened, the stench of death began to fill the air. Prior to that, there was no decay and there was no stink. Imagine that. No BO. That would be really kind of cool. But it happened. Things were different now. Their innocence was lost and a zombie was born. In addition to their innocence being forever lost, a whole domino effect of consequences began. And the first result of their actions was that their eyes were opened. And they realized that they were naked, and so they covered themselves. So what's that about? So they're naked, big deal, okay? For the first time in their lives, they saw their differences rather than being selflessly focused, okay, on each other, as they once were, they became self-focused and self-centered. The image of God was now marred, and they suddenly noticed themselves for the very first time. And with that, because of their sins, they noticed imperfection and the bad smell. And it caused insecurity, and it caused shame, division, a breach of relationship, of trust. Prior to this, Genesis says that they were naked and not ashamed. They saw past their differences. They were completely secure. They were completely one. They had intimacy and total trust. And their newly found sin divided them. They felt shame for the first time. And somehow it was rooted within their sexuality. The insecurity and fear they experienced affected their identities as male and female. Their sin wasn't sexual in nature, but it affected them to the core of their being. That's how deep this went. And the next thing that happened was they hid from God. They experienced fear. And so they in a breach of relationship with the one who lovingly gave them everything. In fact, notice that God actually made it hard for them to sin. He didn't make it easy. He didn't fill the garden with all kinds of forbidden fruit. He didn't give them a laundry list of poisonous plants. Oh, you can't eat that, and watch out for, he didn't do that. It was just one tree. Everything else they were free to have. And God warned them for their own protection. He gave them choice, and that's what love is about. That's what freedom is about. That's the only reason why he even did that. But they hid from God, and their choice marred relationship with him. And because they had disobeyed in their innocence, it would now be much easier to resist God in their fallen state. So the consequences piled up, consequences that we still experience today. Extreme pain in childbirth for women, unhealthy relationships between husbands and wives, and inequality there, okay? Go down the line in the same chapter, Genesis, and it says, the husband will rule over the wife, and the wife will have a desire to control her man. Sound familiar? Okay, and the list goes on. Thorns and weeds and hard work and sickness, disease, pain, and ugly, ugly, ugly spiders, Death. They were expelled from the Garden of Eden, which was actually both a consequence and an act of mercy. Genesis records that had they eaten of the tree of life, they would have been locked into a perpetual condemned state with no hope of resurrection or redemption. So it was actually an act of mercy that they got kicked out. But not too long later, it's recorded that Adam and Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel. And I would bet my house that, like any good parent, they prayed hard that sin virus would not be passed to their boys. But guess what? It was passed. And Cain, the firstborn, even in light of being visited by God and lovingly warned by God, look, that sin inside you wants to control you. It wants to have you. Don't bow to it. He blew God off. And in a moment of rage and anger, he grabbed his younger brother out in the field and he killed him in cold blood. And so we see the sin virus spread. But not just spread, it got worse. The next point is every person since has been born with an inner zombie. People will have religious and philosophical arguments, about this concept of original sin. Christianity says and teaches that we are born sinners. Others argue that we are born good. Islam, is one such religion that claims that we're born good and without sin until we choose to do that. But the fact is that sin, the inner zombie, is intertwined with our DNA, with our entire makeup, both spiritual and physical. And if you want proof, I love how Nick Vujicic said it. He said this: put 2 toddlers on the floor and give them one toy, and you will see evil. Okay? And it's so true. How many of you, if you're parents, how many of you had to teach your kids to be bad? No, none of us. Here's how to be bad, son. No, we have to teach them how to be good. Why? Because the virus is there right when we take our first breath. And we have a magnetic pull to self-centeredness and to evil and to feeding that zombie. Now, are we totally depraved and evil? I wouldn't say that either. Every one of us still has the very good image of God stamped right into our souls. Okay? We do. I like how David put it in the Psalms. He said this: "For you, God, created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well." Okay? So, there is goodness inside of us, definitely. But there's also a zombie, okay, that we're born with. The living dead that wants its own way. It's part of our nature from the moment we take our first breath. And here's a passage that talks about that. Those who live according to the sinful nature, okay, nature, sinful like nature, that's our nature, have minds set on what that nature desires. Those controlled by the sinful nature cannot please God. And so there's this virus, this sin, this inner zombie is part of our nature. We're born with it. It's why doing right is so difficult. And just look at what the human race has become and is becoming. Look at what we've done to ourselves and the heartache that we face, the lives that are ripped apart every day. Drugs, rape, incest, divorce, murder, lies, deceit, corruption, wars, slavery, human trafficking, extortion of every kind. Humanity's first train wreck has become the gift that keeps on giving. And people say, oh, well, humanity is evolving. Evolving into what? Holy smokes. No, we're not. And more and more we're finding humanity destroy itself and hating God in the process. We still can't even, we still believe that we can do it better, have it better, and know more than God. In fact, if we're honest, we can see that in the next point. Humanity has plunged from ruler to being ruled. In the beginning, God gave Adam and Eve authorities, as I mentioned. We talked about it. It's part of the image of God that we're created with to extend his rule on this planet, to walk in submission to God, but to be ruled by nothing and nobody else. And when Adam and Eve sinned, they forfeited that authority to the serpent. And the spirit behind the snake became the planet's new ruler. And the zombie inside of us became our master. As Paul said in Romans, said this: the sinful mind is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. We are ruled with a desire to please self, to feed that zombie inside. And in case you haven't noticed, most people are not predisposed to running hard after God. Have you ever noticed that? Most people aren't predisposed to do that. We don't have hordes of people beating down the doors to come to church and cry out to God. Just look around and see the empty seats, right? Is that true? No. Instead, we have people running from God, wanting to run their own lives and feed the zombie and please themselves and wander down a road of self-destruction and emptiness. So what do we do? If all of this is true, what's the answer? I'm glad you asked. Okay, so no matter your spiritual background, we're all in the same boat. We all have an inner zombie that needs to be killed. And that's what we're going to spend the rest of our series this month looking at. And this last point here, our walk with Jesus involves slaying the zombie. Paul, the writer of the New Testament book of Romans, describes Jesus as the second Adam. The first Adam blew it, not according to Doritos, but according to the Bible. The first Adam blew it. And because of him, we have a planet full of the living dead. Because of him, sin is everywhere. And the effects of it are endless. But Jesus succeeded where Adam failed. Jesus never succumbed to the serpent's lies or deceits or temptations. Not only did Jesus not sin, but he fully submitted to and trusted God the Father, all the way to death, to pay for Adam's sin, to pay for your sin and mine. And through Jesus alone, we have the hope of slaying the zombie within. Because Jesus conquered sin and death and hell and the deceiver, he desires to come alongside you and me to help us to do the same. And if you're here today and you don't know Jesus, if you've never put your faith in him or confessed your need for him, I'll give you that opportunity in a few minutes. But maybe you're a Christian and you have put your faith in him, but you haven't surrendered to Jesus. Instead, you're still choosing to feed that zombie day in and day out, no matter what the consequences. And yeah, it might be a little fight here and there, and a little denial here and there, but you're still feeding that sucker. And you don't resist. You've given up the fight. Today is the day to turn that around and take a stand and say, I'm going to lop the head off this sucker because it's hurting me and it's hurting other people and it's driving me away from God, just like it did to Adam and Eve. What could our lives be like if we started slaying zombies? What could this world be like if more and more zombies were fought? Imagine that, huh? Woo! Okay. Can't really edit that off the YouTube tape there. That would be bad. But what would it be like if we fought and starved and put this thing to death, right? Put me to death. But what kind of life would spring forth? Where could we see peace, relationships restored, health, and the blessing of God return? What if we started trusting God again? What if we started trusting him with more and stopped listening to the lies of the serpent, but cut its head off instead? Then we'll begin to taste what Adam and Eve forfeited. It's a lifelong battle, but it's one that we can win, and victory is so sweet. It really is. This week, in our intersection group, believe it or not, we've been going through different belief systems. We've been comparing them with Christianity and so forth. And we finished up looking at Islam. And one of the things that we did was we compared what Christianity teaches about heaven and what Islam teaches about heaven. And Islam teaches about a paradise, a place of bliss and pleasure, mostly for the man, by the way, with all the virgins and maidens that supposedly await him. But they describe it as a place where the desires of the faithful Muslims are met. And it's also not likely that Allah is present there, okay, because he's so far above me. A Muslim might be able to argue with me and correct me. I don't know for sure. But it's in what I've studied on it, it doesn't look like Allah is even present there in paradise. But paradise is a place where pleasure and bliss are centered around human desires. It's completely self-centered. The heaven that Christianity describes, if you read in the book of Revelation, okay, there's this uniting of heaven and earth. Revelation it gives this picture of the city of God descending upon earth. And it says, and now God will dwell with man, and he will be their God, and they will be his people. And there's this sense of fulfillment. It says that there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, okay? The zombies will be dead, and so will sin. And that there will be a culmination of history and a restoration of all things, restored to God's original intention for humanity on this planet. The joy, the peace, the excitement, the fulfillment, and everything good that we will experience in eternity and in this heaven that's described will not be because everything is centered on self, but rather because everything is centered around God. In fact, it talks about that there's not even going to be a need for the sun anymore, because the glory of Jesus Christ will illuminate everything. Does that make sense? And so this version of this description of heaven, yes, it is going to be awesome and joyful and exciting, and there will be purpose and everything. But it's not because it's centered around our human desires or around the zombie. It's because it's going to be centered back on God. And that is exciting. Let's stand. And we're going to pray. So let's bow our heads and close our eyes. And I just want to invite you to pray along with me. You can whisper this prayer if you agree with it, or you can pray it in your heart if you like. But let's just pray together. God, I thank you for today. I thank you that through all this ugliness and the zombie that lives inside of me, that you still love me, and that you died on the cross to pay for my sins. And I believe that. And I confess that I have a zombie living inside of me, and I don't know what to do about it except to turn to you. And so I ask that you would forgive me for letting this zombie rule. Forgive me for sin and how intertwined it is within my own DNA. I need your grace. I need your mercy. And I receive that again freshly today. And I thank you, God, for your faithfulness to give that to me. No strings attached. And I pray that you will help me to follow you, Jesus. Help me to join you, to begin fighting this zombie and to slay this zombie inside. Not just because of this list of sins I want to avoid, but because I want a new nature. And I want to know you more. And I want to walk with you more. And I want to learn to trust you like I've maybe never trusted you before. So God, help me to fight this zombie. Come into my life.